Have you ever tried to prove you were right in an argument, only to feel like things got worse afterward? You spoke logically, your reasoning was clear. Maybe you were even completely right. But instead of being convinced, the other person became distant, uncomfortable, or even quietly lost respect for you. That's the paradox many people fall into. The more you try to win the argument, the more you lose in the relationship. The truth is, most arguments aren't really about finding what's right or wrong. They're where the ego takes over. And once the ego shows up, reason almost disappears. You're no longer communicating, you're fighting. And the cost is often exhaustion, tension, and unnecessary cracks in your relationships. If you want to learn how to stay in control without arguing and keep respect without having to prove you're right, hit like or follow so you don't miss content like this. And now let's get into why silence is sometimes the greatest power in communication. 1. The nature of arguments. Most people believe arguments are about finding the truth, but in reality they're not. Once an argument begins, it quickly shifts from an exchange of ideas to defending the ego. You're no longer trying to understand the other person, you're trying to prove that you're right and they're wrong. For example, in a meeting, when someone challenges your idea, your first reaction usually isn't curiosity, it's discomfort. It feels like your competence is being questioned, and almost instantly you look for a way to push back. That's the moment logic steps aside and emotion takes over, and the other person is doing the same. Neither side is listening to understand anymore, they're listening to counter. The conversation turns into a battle where no one truly wins. A simple way to break this cycle is this. Whenever you feel the urge to respond, immediately pause for 3 seconds and ask yourself, do I want to understand or do I want to win? Even applying this once in a conversation today, you'll start to notice the difference. When you clearly see that the core of most arguments is the ego, you can begin to change how you engage in them. 2. Why arguments escalate. Arguments don't escalate because the issue is too big. They escalate because emotions react faster than reason. When someone says something you disagree with, your brain instantly treats it as a threat, not just to your opinion, but to your identity and self-image. That's why the reaction is so quick. Your voice gets louder, your words sharper, and things gradually spiral out of control. Think back to a recent argument. It may have started as a small misunderstanding, but the more you talked, the more you felt the need to make things clear or get them to understand. And slowly, your words became heavier, more confrontational. That's when the goal shifted from solving the problem to defending yourself. To break this escalation, you need to intervene at the very first reaction. A simple technique: when you feel your emotions rising, slow down your speech and lower your voice. This small action helps bring your rational mind back before things go too far. Try applying this in your next conversation. If you can control the first 10 seconds, you can change the entire outcome. 3. The power of observation and emotional control. The biggest difference between someone who gets pulled into arguments and someone who stays in control lies in their ability to observe. When you don't react immediately, you start noticing things you used to overlook: the other person's tone, the tension in their words, or even the emotions hidden behind their reasoning. At that point, you're no longer being pulled into the situation, you're stepping outside of it to understand it. For example, when someone speaks to you in a harsh tone, instead of reacting at the same intensity, you might realize they're frustrated about something else, something not entirely related to you. That awareness helps you avoid taking things personally and stay calm. Observation isn't passive silence, it's active control. You choose when to speak, how to respond, and most importantly, you don't let your emotions take the lead. A very effective way to practice this in any tense conversation: focus on observing 3 things before responding: their tone, their speaking pace, and their underlying emotions. Just practicing this once a day, you'll gradually find yourself getting pulled into conflicts less and naturally gaining control over conversations. 4. The role of silence. Silence is one of the most powerful tools in communication, yet it's often misunderstood. Many people think that not responding immediately is a sign of weakness, or that you don't know what to say. In reality, when you react instantly, you're handing control over to your emotions, not your reason. On the other hand, a well-timed pause can completely change the dynamic. Imagine this: in the middle of an argument, the other person finishes a confrontational statement, and you don't respond right away. You stay silent for a few seconds, maintain eye contact, and remain calm. What happens next? More often than not, they start talking again, explaining themselves, even lowering the intensity on their own without you doing anything. In this moment, silence isn't empty. It creates psychological pressure and gives space for reason to return. The key is to use silence intentionally, not to avoid, not to endure, but to consciously pause so you can choose a better response. When you master that pause, you master the conversation. Starting today, try this in any tense situation. Force yourself to slow down for at least 3-5 seconds before responding. If you truly want to elevate your communication, control your emotions, and have influence without arguing, follow now so you don't miss content that helps you take control of every conversation. 5. Changing the way you communicate. The way you communicate determines whether a conversation turns into conflict or connection. When you're challenged, the natural reaction is to explain, argue back, or even push harder to defend your point. But this approach often makes the other person put up even stronger defenses. Instead, those who handle situations well tend to do the opposite. They slow the conversation down and redirect it. For example, when someone says, "This idea won't work," instead of immediately arguing back, you might ask, "Which part specifically doesn't seem right to you?" or "What concerns you the most about it?" Just a simple question like that can completely shift the dynamic from confrontation to clarification. The other person starts explaining instead of attacking, and you gain information instead of reacting emotionally. Another important step is acknowledging emotions before presenting logic. Even a simple sentence like "I understand why you feel that way" can help diffuse the situation. When emotions are acknowledged, reason has a chance to come back. Try this in your next conversation. Before you respond with a counterpoint, ask at least one question to better understand the other person. With just this small change, you'll start to notice a clear difference in how people respond to you. 6. The role of emotions and self-esteem. One of the deeper reasons arguments don't end is because a person's self-esteem feels threatened. When someone has expressed their opinion, especially in front of others, admitting they're wrong is no longer just about correcting a mistake. It becomes a matter of pride. At that point, no matter how logical your argument is, they're likely to defend their position to the end. For example, in a meeting, if you say directly "you're wrong," the other person will almost certainly push back, not because they don't understand, but because they can't afford to lose face. But if you shift your approach to something like, "I used to think the same way, but after trying this, I noticed something different," you create a safe way out for them. It's no longer about right versus wrong, it becomes a shared exploration. Preserving the other person's dignity doesn't make you weaker, it makes them more receptive. When they don't feel attacked, they don't need to defend themselves. Try this the next time you want to challenge someone. Avoid direct phrases like "you're wrong" or "that's not correct." Instead, share your perspective or experience. With just this small shift in wording, you'll notice less resistance and a much smoother, more constructive conversation. 7. Knowing when to walk away. Not every argument is worth your time, and this is something many people realize too late. Some people aren't trying to understand, they just want to oppose to win, or simply to pull you into their emotional spiral. The more you try to explain, the more they push back. At that point, the conversation loses its value and becomes nothing more than an energy drain. For example, when you're dealing with someone who constantly interrupts or dismisses every point you make, no matter how clearly you explain, that's a sign they're not looking for a solution, but for confrontation. If you keep engaging, you're stepping into a battle you can't win. The smart move here isn't to argue better, it's to stop at the right time. You can calmly end it with something like, "I think we're seeing this from different perspectives. Maybe it's best to leave it here." This helps you maintain your composure without prolonging the conflict. Try this the next time you realize a conversation isn't going anywhere. Choose to step back instead of trying to fix it. Knowing when to stop is a powerful form of control. 8. The benefits of not arguing. When you stop engaging in unnecessary arguments, the first thing you gain isn't losing, it's relief. You no longer carry frustration after every conversation, no longer replay every sentence in your head trying to figure out who was right or wrong. That energy is preserved for what truly matters. For example, instead of arguing for hours with someone who is stubborn, you choose to stop early. The result? You stay calm, and the relationship doesn't get pushed to a breaking point. Over time, people begin to see you differently, not as someone who argues a lot, but as someone composed, reliable, and whose words carry weight. Interestingly, when you stop trying to prove you're right, people actually become more willing to listen to you. Your influence no longer comes from pressure, but from stability and self-control. Try this today. Pick one situation where you could argue but consciously choose not to. Then observe what changes. With just that small decision, you're starting to build a kind of strength that very few people truly have. Finally, what you need to realize is this: communication is not a place to prove you're smarter than others. It's a place to show how well you can control yourself. Anyone can talk, argue, and push back, but not everyone has the awareness to pause, observe, and choose a wiser response. True power isn't about how many arguments you win. It's about how many unnecessary conflicts you avoid. When you're no longer driven by the need to be right, you begin to see things more clearly. You start to understand other people's emotions, recognize the motives behind their words, and most importantly, you're no longer controlled by small triggers. That's when you shift from reacting to taking control. And when you're in control of yourself, you don't need to raise your voice to be heard or argue to be respected. Your calm presence speaks for itself. Remember, every time you hold back an impulsive reaction, every time you choose silence instead of retaliation, every time you ask a question instead of arguing, you are building a rare kind of strength. A strength that isn't loud but is steady and deeply rooted. But if you only read this and don't apply it, nothing will change. So right after this, choose one real situation at work, with family, or with friends, and apply at least one principle. Slow down, observe, and don't react immediately. Just once, and you'll feel the difference. If you truly want to upgrade your mindset, control your emotions, and become influential without arguing, hit follow now. Don't wait until a relationship breaks down, an argument goes too far, or you regret words spoken in the heat of the moment before deciding to change. Start today. In your very next conversation, well-timed silence is power.